couple things, and we have questions on these, but
Hmm.
I'll let Sitch. I don't know. Do you have anything that you want to ask before we get
Well,
started?
so yeah, it turns out that Anna is a massive fan of our program. She's seen every episode, just huge fan, right?
Well, okay, so I happened to come across a video you guys did about me. It was the stream on I hate to name names, but you guys were covering the leftist mafia and their insane gaslighting video about me. And you guys were the only ones, as far as I could see,
Hmm.
that actually did a good job in highlighting how badly they were gaslighting me.
Right.
And so I thank you for doing that because, when everyone around you, everyone who alleges to be your friends, tells you something isn't true, but they keep repeating it to you over and over again, you start asking yourself, like, am I the crazy one? You know? So that I really appreciated that. But you guys have put out a ton of videos about me that have not been friendly or nice, and it's okay. I mean, I can be a good sport about it, and I do
Hmm.
think that you guys raised a few valid points, and I just need to be willing to accept where I was wrong and where people are critiquing from good faith. Like you guys have a little bit of an edgy style.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about TYT because one of their woke hosts, who happens to be trans, is leaving the network. And the reason why this person is leaving the network is because Anna Kasperian and Cenk Ugyur apparently are too transphobic for this person to handle. Okay, now this comes as we've seen kind of a turnaround in views, specifically from Anna Kasperian, in regards to the extremists that are on her side of the political aisle. Okay, we've talked about this time and time and time again on my channel. Anna Kasperian has basically pivoted when it comes to the radical left on issues like race, climate change, and gender ideology slash LGBTQ. Okay, they're seeing the writing on the wall that these people that they're in bed with, these far leftists on these issues, are extremists. Okay, and for somebody like Anna Kasperian, who happens to be a white passing woman, she knows that she is a prime target for the woke revolutionaries, and it doesn't matter if she agrees with them politically. They're gonna come after her, right? They're not going to tolerate basically anything that she says if she does not 100% agree with them. Okay, she knows. So now, again, she's come out recently and started to attack the left. For example, the video I played at the beginning of this video shows Anna Kasperian on a, I guess, opposition channel, okay, talking about the leftist mob, right? And again, that's pissing people off, right? People are losing their minds, okay, at TYT over the fact that Anna Kasperian went on a channel that has different political views than TYT. Okay, they say that they're now becoming enlightened centrists, right? They're becoming right wing, and I want to react to the TYT host. This person's name is Benjamin Carollo. Okay, I guess. As you can see here in this profile, they're Marxist Leninist news bimbo with 4 degrees, right? Okay, so this person is going to tell us why they're leaving TYT, and I want to react to it because, again, this is hilarious, the drama that's going on there. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Alright, so in case it wasn't obvious from the title of this video, I'm done with TYT. Now, before we get into everything about this isn't about all of the hosts. There are actually a ton of people at TYT that I think are genuinely cool people. This is mostly about Cenk and Anna. But of course, since they're the people that are the big names on the network and Cenk kind of owns the company, it's a pretty big deal when they do something I don't know, become incredibly transphobic and start what appears to be a ridiculous right-wing grift. I mean, literally everything.
Yeah. So again, this is funny. Anytime somebody on the left doesn't agree with the far leftists, the communists, 100%, they're starting a right-wing grift, right? They're a right-wing grift. And there's some type of bigot as well, too, right? So you're a bigot and you're also starting a right-wing grift. Again, these people can't handle any disagreement. I'm pretty sure Anna and Cenk are still leftists, and it sucks for me having to defend them. But that's where you find yourself at in politics sometimes. You have to defend people that you disagree with from people who are more extreme than them, right? Because again, these types of extremists, people like this person, who again I'm not sure is a dude. I believe is a dude, right? That's transitioned into a girl or whatever. People like this person right here, again, they're radical extremists. They're extremely radical. Anybody that disagrees with them is a transphobe.
From the things that they said about homeless people to the stuff that they said about abolitionists and their general sort of like refusal to hear the people that are criticizing them and saying, no, this is what people are actually trying to say. You're not really hearing what we're saying, or you're not listening. Now, we're not going to focus on literally all of the right-wing things that they've been doing lately, especially in the past year. They've done this pivot where they go after prison abolitionists, people who say defund the police, homeless people.
Yeah, because they realize it's ridiculous, right? They realize it's ridiculous and is also just not politically good. It's not politically good to advocate for homeless people to be able to do drugs outside of schools, right? It's not good politically to advocate for defunding the police. These are unpopular policies, and they're smart enough to know that a vast majority of people don't agree with that, right? Except, again, the radical woke revolutionaries, okay? And this is why they're doing that, because they also live in LA, right? For example, Anna told a story about how, I think she got like approached or something like that outside of her house or in her neighborhood or something like that. And she's been a victim of the crime, so it seems. So again, when you're a victim of the crime, right, when you're a victim of all the radical stuff that, you push, you're going to see the writing on the wall and say, hey, you know what, maybe this is just not good. Maybe these policies are not good. Maybe we should be advocating for these things, right? Because it's not in their best interest, right? But no, right? This is a right-wing grift, according to this person.
And anybody that they think is a radical left, because, doing the enlightened, the centrist thing is really a smart move in this year, 2023, right? I still got that calendar right. No, we're mostly going to be focusing on their transphobia, which they have been escalating rapidly, which I guess is something that everybody really predicted would happen starting...
Hey, disagreeing with this person, right? Disagreeing with this person is transphobia, right?
I think about 4 months ago, when Anna Kasperian put out a tweet complaining about the use of the term birthing person, which is really, really funny because she kept on talking about how, it erases women, and it minimizes womanhood down to just body parts. Except for it literally doesn't. Everybody very immediately pointed out that that's a silly thing to say, that in fact, thinking that the term woman and birthing person are completely interchangeable actually does reduce women to body parts. And what precipitated this is even more silly because it was originally in reference to AOC and other politicians using the term when they're talking about abortion rights. And I don't know if you know this, but abortion rights are pretty specific to people with uteruses who are capable of having children.
AKA women, right? So what's the point of having the term birthing person? That's the whole point. The whole point of what people are upset about is the fact that you're using an unnecessary term that basically takes away the functionality of pregnancy from women, okay? Because you want to pretend that men can get pregnant when that's just not the case. It's unnecessary, and we all know what you're doing, right? But don't pretend like we don't know, okay? Again, this person's being obtuse on purpose, or they're just, I don't know. I don't get it.
And so the term birthing person is a pretty useful term to be narrow enough to be specific, but also cover all of the relevant people. And that's why politicians have been using it in that context.
Well, they're using it because they're woke, right? They're using it because they're trying to appeal to radicals like yourself, right? Despite the fact that, again, it's not popular, right? It's just like the term Latinx, okay? Nobody in the Hispanic community uses the term Latinx to describe themselves, okay? Just like no woman uses the term birthing person to describe herself. Again, it's just ridiculous.
Since posting the original tweet, literally it seems like they keep going back and forth whenever they hear that argument. Basically, if there's somebody reasonable in the room with them saying why the term birthing person might be used, then they're like, yeah, I guess it makes sense of that context, but I just don't like it. But when somebody reasonable isn't around, then they just go and complain about the term birthing person again. And that really is why so many people predicted that they were going to go into this extreme TERF pipeline, because, of course, that's a very common starting point right there. The trans people are erasing women. Oh my god. But then everything escalated when they decided to talk about trans people in sports, which is a very common thing that a lot of cisgender people like to complain about because they don't understand how hormones work. And instead of attempting to try and get any type of understanding, they just want to sit and argue about their assumptions about how they think hormones should work. They come in with all of these assumptions about biological males and think that there's some sort of magic secret advantage that just exists persistently regardless as to what hormones are literally dictating what your body is doing at the time. And
Yeah, but a vast majority of the time there's an advantage. A vast majority of men, the average man is stronger, faster, has denser bones, has advantages athletically over. I don't understand why these people can't understand this basic concept, right? They think because there are some examples of men who may have more feminine features, who may not necessarily be more athletic than women or have an athletic advantage over women because they were born a certain way or whatever. They think that because there are very one-off examples of this, they think that, well, the general rule doesn't apply, right? And that's just not the case. And even if the average man goes on hormones, okay, they're still going to retain significant biological advantages over women that honestly is probably going to be more than an elite woman versus an average woman genetically, okay? That's just what it is, right? That's what it is. Again, we see that, for example, with people like Leah Thomas, who retains an advantage biologically even over elite women in swimming, okay? That's just, we've seen it time and time again.
Where I came in and I started tweeting at some of the hosts saying that, hey, you're wrong about this, that, or the other thing. You're missing these details. Hey, you're literally just being transphobic right now. I even reached out to people within the network to say like, hey, I would like to maybe sit down with Cenk and maybe even have an on-the-air conversation where I could talk about how all of this stuff actually works. You know, I may not be a doctor, but I like to think that in my master's degree in biotechnology and my experience literally being a trans person who, by the way, most trans people will do a ton of research about hormones before they get on them because a lot of doctors don't really know that much about it. So that's actually...
what an admission, right? What an admission. A lot of doctors don't really know that much about it, right? But they're out here prescribing it to children, okay? For them to transition, but they don't know that much about it. Wow, interesting, right? Interesting admission here.
Something that I did where I spent a ton of time like reading through like research papers about what would be like the best for my transition and how it would go and things like that. So I'd like to think with my background, with some experience in biology and, you know, reading a ton about how specifically hormone replacement therapy works for trans women like myself, I might know a thing or two about all of these things. And I figured, hey, if Cenk doesn't know about this, maybe it'd be interesting for him to learn. But with that though, he wasn't really interested in having an on-the-air conversation because, you know, he seemed pretty intent on not changing his mind, but he was open to having a phone conversation. So I handed to him on that, like, yeah, great. So we had a chat over the phone. Now, obviously, I'm not going to get into the details of literally every single thing that we talked about. I'm just going to give you a brief synopsis because that's really all that's important. And there are two main sticking points that I really want to touch on that happened within that phone call that I think were really a sign of like how far things were gonna go and honestly how much further things might go from here still. The first sticking point was Cenk seemed convinced of this idea that I'm living in some sort of bubble. They've even said it on the air, that people fighting for trans rights are all living in some sort of bubble. The problem with that...
You are living in a bubble, right? You are. Most of the country does not agree with you, okay? They don't. You're living in a bubble, right? And you're never told that you're just wrong, okay? And that's the problem. You think you're right, okay, and you're not.
Is I have a lot of random trans people from a ton of different political perspectives that will like reach out to me about like, hey, how are things going at TYT? Or hey, you're really inspiring, you know, stuff like that. And I also have like a decent circle of friends and family, many of which who are sort of all over the place politically. I told Cenk very specifically, you know, I have friends that are like big Joe Biden fans, right? Like they are theoretically to your political right. his reaction to that was quite literally laughter, which I just thought was like so hilarious. And he just kind of wouldn't believe. He was like, no, you're in a bubble. You're in a bubble. And I kept pressing. I was like, no, Cenk, you don't understand. I matched with a random person on Tinder, and the first thing that they started talking to me about is how transphobic TYT has been lately. Because I think that they had just kind of figured out who I was. And
Yeah,
Cenk was
so you're in a bubble, right? Just because they support Joe Biden doesn't mean that you're outside of the bubble. When it comes to this very issue of trans rights, you're definitely in a bubble, okay? And if this person, just because this person supports Joe Biden, doesn't mean they're not a far leftist, because Joe Biden basically is a far leftist at this point. So hey, I mean, that point really doesn't, to me, it doesn't make that much sense.
It's like, no, see, you're living in a bubble. And it's like, yeah, okay, buddy.
This is actually an example of you living in a bubble. The fact that you think that just because somebody supports Joe Biden and your radical trans rights doesn't mean that means that you're not in a bubble. No, it means you're definitely in a bubble.
A completely random person I matched with on Tinder is just part of the bubble that I'm magically living in. But really,
I mean, yes, that's true. He is, right? If they're telling you that, you know, Cenk and Anna are being transphobic, which they're not, okay, that's a part of the bubble, right? That's a part of the small bubble that you're in.
That kind of gave me the vibe of like, oh, Cenk really thinks that like every trans person is part of some sort of ideology, that we're of like a strict like political viewpoint, and that we don't just exist as like a type of person that exists, you know? It really did seem like Cenk was of the mind that to be transgender is to subscribe to a very specific political viewpoint. Which,
well, most likely you're going to be a far leftist, maybe a communist like yourself, right? I mean, you are an embodiment of what probably a trans person is going to believe politically, okay? I mean, that's just what it is. There's a few trans people who may be more right-wing or whatever, but that's few and far between.
I don't know if you know this, but that's actually something that the like most unhinged transphobes are like spewing as conspiracy theories and stuff like that. They're like, these trans rights activists are all part of this strict ideological group, and they're infecting people with this radical gender ideology, is literally what like these unhinged right-wingers are saying. But it does kind of seem like Cenk is just kind of in that camp of like, oh, if you're trans, you must by definition be like some sort of radical leftist.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, most likely, okay, because people on the right, actual moderates, they don't agree with you, right? So I'm just saying, yeah, I mean, that's just what it is. Yeah, more than likely, yeah.
You know, clearly, like, not connecting the dots about people like Caitlyn Jenner or Blair White existing, which honestly was just really, really frustrating to have in that conversation, because the people that are in my circle of friends are people who like literally have been homeless in their lives and people who literally are making like ridiculous amounts of money. I have a pretty broad circle, you know. Something that kind of happens sometimes when you're like a polyamorous trans woman that's like a little bit popular on the internet. It turns out that you can build a pretty wide circle of people from like different perspectives and backgrounds and stuff. I know, what a shocker. But then there's the other part that was like even more disturbing, which was I pointed out something that Anna had said on the air, where I was like, hey, Anna said this bit about doctors giving hormone therapy to children because they were afraid of being called transphobic. And I was very clear. I was like, you know that's not happening, right? Like,
no, it's definitely happening, right? You just admitted, right, that you just admitted that doctors don't really know much about these hormone therapies that they're giving out, right? They don't really know that much. So they don't know that much. Why are they giving it out, right? A lot of this stuff is because of, one, money, right? It's an easy way to make money. Two, they are afraid of the mob, right? They are afraid of being called transphobic or whatever type of term that, you know, people like this person uses to try to get their way when people disagree with them, right? That's exactly why they're doing it, right? It's 100% why they're doing it. We know, right? We know because we know what they say behind closed doors. Okay, we know behind closed doors what they say is that, well, we really don't know much about this stuff, again, which this person admitted, and that, hey, it can be harmful in a lot of circumstances. We know that, but they're going to give it out anyways because, again, what? Money, and they also don't want to be characterized as some type of bigot.
Know that isn't happening. And Cenk's response was, I don't know. See, I could see it happening though.
I did.
And I'm like, no, but you couldn't. Because if that actually did happen, that would be medical malpractice, and it would be like a federal case to just give kids hormone replacement therapy because you didn't want to seem transphobic. That's
yeah, I mean, that's what. A lot of people are arguing for that, right? A lot of people are saying, look, this might be medical malpractice. We need to look into this, okay? I mean, yo, this is hilarious.
Ridiculous. On its face is ridiculous. Anybody who knows anything about politics would know that not only would that be a federal case, but it would be like national headlines. Every single newspaper would turn that into the biggest story for months. I mean, literally, the biggest story transphobes have had for the past 2 months is Dylan Mulvaney being on a can of Budweiser. So do you think that they really wouldn't make it national headlines even if it just happened once? But no, Cenk still doubled down and was like, I don't know, I could see that happening. And it's like, great, we have somebody who is like the head of a news network who is like basing political opinions off of things that he could see happening. Like, what a wonderful position to be in at this point. Like, the real brilliant five-head political take right there. I could imagine this scenario, and that really says something about society, doesn't it? And that had to be one of the most unhinged parts of that phone call. But whatever. I sent him some research papers about trans people in sports that went into detail pretty clearly about like, hey, there's no evidence that there's any reason to discriminate against trans people in sports. And that was like the conclusion that it came to pretty firmly, right?
Ridiculous.
Hey, there's no evidence that we should discriminate against trans people.
There's plenty of evidence. There's plenty of evidence. Leah Thomas is evidence, okay? And we're not talking about discrimination. It's not discrimination, okay? We're talking about discrimination against women, actually, okay? Because it is discrimination against women. But there is evidence, okay? There's plenty of evidence. I see, this is why, a lot of these studies, bruh, these people point out these woke studies. It's like the scientific community is discrediting themselves almost on a daily basis, right? When they put stuff out like this that go against the opposite of reality, what everybody can observe for themselves, and then they try to use this as proof that, oh, see, you're a bigot, right? You're a bigot if you don't want biological men and women competing against each other because this study says, there's no advantages, right? There's no reason not to let biological men and women compete against each other in sports. When, again, there's plenty of examples why we should not do that, right? Ask the girl, the high school student that was on a volleyball team that got concussed when she got hit in the face with the volleyball from a trans athlete, right? Ask her, right? Ask her, is there any evidence, right, that men should be playing against women in sports? Again, this guy is ridiculous. This is so dumb.
What a wild concept. It's amazing. I know. But Cenk apparently has learned the wrong lesson from that, especially when you look at some of the clips from his most recent rant about trans people that he just did the other day regarding trans people in sports and the extreme radical activists that support trans people in sports. Now, let's listen really quick to some of the clips from this rant to see where exactly Cenk is on these issues.
No, the hormone blockers do lower the testosterone, they do even things out a lot, right? But the men still have other physical advantages, like we maintain mass much better. Yeah. And to give you a sense of how unfair this is, that where she won in Canada with 275-pound bench press. I bench press 275. Okay.
I don't believe that, right? But hey, if Jake says that he bench presses 275, I'll believe him for these purposes because he's actually, using some common sense.
And that's not a big deal for a guy.
This is so ridiculous. This is literally.
I would say it is right. It's not that big of a deal for a guy.
Ridiculous. Okay, think about this. He's like, oh, this trans woman won a competition where she broke a record bench pressing 275 pounds. And clearly, that's unfair. Because I, a cisgender man, can easily bench press 275 pounds. Therefore, there must be an advantage. And it's like, my guy, she literally broke a record. Like, what are you talking about? She clearly wasn't having like an incredibly easy time. You're stumbling so close to the point. Like, Cenk is literally incapable in this moment of separating trans women from cisgender men in his own brain right here.
Because they're... His whole point is that there's not that much of a difference. Evidenced by the fact that the trans woman is bench pressing 275 pounds, which a vast majority of women, right? Even if they trained all their lives to bench press 275, they're not bench pressing 275. That is the point, right? That is the point. Okay, I don't understand. These people, this is what I'm talking about. Not operating in reality. Not operating, just being obtuse. And I don't know if it's on purpose or what, but it's like, do you not understand that his whole point is that the average dude can bench 275 pounds? No, not even an average dude. If an average dude trains, right, they can bench 275 pounds. But if the average woman trains to bench 275 pounds, it's not happening. The fact that a trans woman stepped into a competition and broke a record is exactly the proof and evidence that you say doesn't exist, that this is not fair. But again, for whatever, this person's not putting the two and two together. They're trying to pretend like Cenk Ugyur is the crazy person, right? He's the one that's not grounded in reality when that's not the case here. Okay, he makes perfect sense.
Like, he is fundamentally refusing to connect the dots that hormones maybe actually have an impact on, I know this is wild, your ability to maintain mass. That maybe perhaps, like, your biological traits are not dictated by some ethereal assignment of gender that you were given at birth. And maybe
But it is, right? It's dictated by your hormones. Okay, it's dictated by your chromosomes. This is what, wow. It really blows my mind that this person is not seeing the obvious here, okay, which is that the point is that even on estrogen, okay, even on drugs, the biological male is still able to outperform the women, okay, significantly, to break records, okay? This person thinks that getting on hormones is some type of great equalizer, right? When it's simply not, okay? And Cenk Ugyur was pointing that out. That's his whole point. But for whatever reason, this person is completely missing that point. Just completely missing that point, okay? I don't know if it's on purpose or they're just not listening, okay? They accuse other people of not listening when it's like, clearly you're not listening because you're not addressing the actual argument, which is that even on drugs and hormones, which are supposed to equalize things, it's supposed to make things fair, it's still not fair because men still retain biological advantages because they were born men, right? But again, if they acknowledge this, they don't have a counter argument for it. So it's better to ignore it, right? It's better to not deal with the actual crux of the argument. It's better to just basically straw man Cenk and to pretend like what Cenk's saying is nonsense, when the reality is what this person is saying is actually really nonsense. Wow.
Perhaps are actually dictated by the hormones that are like flowing through your body, telling your body what to do. Like, could he have used a sillier example? He's trying to say that trans women have an advantage in sports because he personally, as a cisgender man that has never taken estrogen, would be able to beat them all at a bench press competition.
He would. Yeah, he would. Exactly.
Just on its face, ridiculous.
No, it's not. This rant is ridiculous. All right, this video is getting too long. Okay. Again, this is what's going on at TYT, right? And I just wanted to react to this because it shows you how, again, this is the type of drama that you got to deal with when you're in bed with these types of people. But hey, it is what it is. It's just fascinating stuff. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.